The hidden strength. Elena had always believed that life was a puzzle. Complicated, intricate, and often frustrating to piece together. But for her, it felt like something was missing. Like one critical piece she couldn't find no matter how hard she looked. Every day, she woke up in her small apartment on the outskirts of the city and got ready for a life that felt increasingly routine. She worked as a junior architect at a mid-sized firm. And although she had always loved the idea of creating spaces that could change lives, lately, her enthusiasm had dulled. It wasn't just her career that had started to feel stale. It was her entire life. Her friends had drifted away. Or perhaps she had pulled away from them. And the relationships she had once cherished now felt like echoes of a different, more vibrant person. As the days blurred into one another, Elena often asked herself how she had ended up here, in this place where even her dreams seemed far out of reach. It was a crisp November morning when things began to change. Elena sat at her desk, reviewing yet another set of blueprints for a high-rise office building in the center of the city. The client had demanded a design that was bold, something that stood out. But as Elena stared at the screen, she realized the plans lacked any real soul. They were efficient, yes. They were functional, yes. But they didn't spark anything inside her. Her mind drifted back to her college days, to the projects she had worked on with such excitement. She remembered how she had wanted to create spaces that felt alive, that breathed with energy and purpose. She had even imagined designing homes for people who didn't have one. Public spaces that brought communities together. Parks where children could play freely. But those dreams, like so many others, had faded into the background as she found herself caught up in the grind of corporate life. "Good morning, Elena," a voice broke her from her thoughts. She looked up to see Marco, the senior architect at her firm, standing in the doorway. Marco had always been a steady presence at the company. Calm, collected, and perpetually optimistic. He was the type of person who seemed to have an endless supply of energy, even though he had been in the field for over 20 years. "Morning, Marco," Elena replied, trying to hide the weariness in her tone. Marco stepped into the room and gave her a smile. "You're still working on that project? Huh? It's due in 2 days. Are you feeling stuck?" Quote. Elena sighed and leaned back in her chair. "Yeah, I don't know. I just don't feel inspired. You know, I'm just going through the motions. And it's exhausting." Marco studied her for a moment, his expression softening. "Elena, I've been in this field a long time. And I can tell you one thing. If you're only designing for clients or for deadlines, you'll burn out. It's not about the paycheck or meeting expectations. It's about creating something that moves you, that makes you feel like you've contributed to the world in some meaningful way." Elena shook her head. "I don't even know where to start anymore. I've lost my spark." Marco smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "That's okay. It happens to all of us. But the good news is that the spark never really disappears. Sometimes, you just have to dig deeper to find it again." He patted her on the shoulder before leaving the room. "Take some time to think about what you want to create. Not what others want. What you want." Elena stared at the blueprints for several more hours. But the words of Marco's advice lingered in her mind. That night, as she sat alone in her apartment, she thought about his words again. What did she want to create? What had happened to the young woman who had dreamed of transforming spaces to help people? The next day, she made a decision. She would take a break from her current project. She wasn't sure what that would mean for her career. If it meant she would be risking her reputation or possibly even her job. But she realized that she couldn't keep going down this path of lifeless designs. She needed to find her spark again. Elena spent the following weekend wandering the city, taking in the architecture around her. She visited old neighborhoods and new developments, observing how spaces interacted with the people who inhabited them. She made notes in her journal, snapping photos of buildings that caught her eye. Whether they were modern and sleek or weathered by time, there was something captivating about the way architecture could tell stories. She saw the potential in every corner she walked past, even in places that seemed abandoned or forgotten. One afternoon, while sitting in a quiet park, Elena met an elderly woman named Ruth who had been a local artist for many years. Ruth was sitting on a bench near the fountain, sketching the landscape in front of her. "Mind if I sit?" Elena asked, her voice tentative. "Not at all," Ruth replied, smiling warmly. "The bench is big enough for both of us." As Elena sat down, she couldn't help but glance at Ruth's sketchbook. The pages were filled with delicate drawings of the park. Each tree, each stone, each ripple in the water captured in intricate detail. "That's beautiful," Elena said, genuinely impressed. Ruth looked up from her drawing. "Thank you. I've been coming here for years. Every day, there's something new to see. The light changes, the people change, and the seasons do their thing. It's always different, but it's always the same." Elena smiled softly. "I've been trying to find something that sparks my creativity again. I'm an architect, but lately, I feel like I've lost my way." Ruth tilted her head, her gaze thoughtful. "I've been an artist for more years than I can count. And I've learned one thing. You can't force creativity. You have to let it come to you. But you also have to stay open to the world around you. Sometimes, the most unexpected things will give you the inspiration you need." Elena nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest for the first time in a long while. She felt like she was having a real conversation, one that wasn't centered on deadlines or expectations. "You know," Ruth continued, "I'm working on a new piece right now. But it's not going to be a traditional painting. I'm trying to capture the feeling of this park, the way it changes with the seasons. I want to show that life doesn't always stay the same. But there's beauty in that change. Maybe you could think about your own work in the same way." The simplicity of Ruth's words struck a chord with Elena. Life didn't have to be stagnant. Architecture didn't have to be about building rigid, unfeeling structures. She could create something that was alive, something that reflected the rhythms of life itself. Over the next few weeks, Elena threw herself into a new project, one that was entirely her own. She had an idea for a community center, a place that would serve as a gathering point for people of all ages. It wouldn't just be a building. It would be a space that invited connection, creativity, and growth. The design would be organic, flowing, and sustainable. She envisioned gardens on rooftops, open spaces that encouraged conversation, and walls made of local materials that would blend into the surrounding environment. As Elena worked tirelessly, she found herself rediscovering the passion she had once felt for architecture. She began sketching and planning in a way that felt fresh, even thrilling. It wasn't just about meeting a deadline anymore. It was about creating something that could make a real difference. When the time came to present her proposal to the firm, Elena was nervous. She had poured her heart into the project, and the thought of being rejected was almost too much to bear. But as she stood in front of her colleagues and clients, something inside her clicked. She wasn't presenting just a design. She was sharing a vision of what architecture could be when it was truly aligned with people's needs. To her surprise, The proposal was met with enthusiasm. People saw the potential in her idea. They recognized the heart behind it. Elena, Marco said with a smile after the meeting. This is exactly the kind of work we need to be doing. You've found your spark again. Elena couldn't help but laugh. A genuine laugh that felt like the first in a long time. I think I have. Months later, Elena's community center became a reality. The building stood as a testament to her perseverance, creativity, and belief in the power of change. The park bench she had sat on that fateful day with Rath now had a small plaque in the garden of the community center. It read, "Sometimes, the most unexpected things spark the greatest creativity." As Elena watched people from all walks of life come together in the space she had created, she realized something that Rath had said was true. Life didn't always stay the same. But there was beauty in that change. And sometimes, the path forward came not from forcing it, but from letting it unfold. The end. This story reflects the power of rediscovery, the value of trusting in one's own instincts, and the strength of community. It reminds us that we are all capable of finding our spark again, even when we feel lost.